The neighborhood of Sterling Oaks was a collection of pristine driveways and silent lawns, the kind of place people moved to when they wanted to disappear into the comfort of suburbia. For Daniel Reyes, it was a tactical choice. As a high-ranking county sheriff, Daniel had spent 20 years studying the mechanics of crime and the psychology of those who commit it. After a sophisticated ring of organized burglaries began targeting upscale subdivisions, he moved into Sterling Oaks under a veil of total anonymity. He didn't drive his marked patrol unit home. He didn't wear his tan uniform in the driveway. He was simply Dan, a quiet man in flannels and work boots who spent his Saturdays tinkering with a vintage motorcycle in his garage. He wanted to see the neighborhood as a predator would, and more importantly, he wanted to see how the local authority behaved when they thought no one of consequence was watching. He didn't have to wait long. The threat didn't come from the burglaries, it came from the HOA office. The mandate of exposure. Karen Whitlock, the newly appointed HOA president, was a woman who treated her position like a divine right. She arrived at Daniel's house 3 days after he moved in, clipboard in hand. Her smile was a practiced, cold mask of forced friendliness. "Mr. Reyes," she chirped, though her eyes were already scanning the interior of his house past his shoulder. "We haven't seen your employment records in the welcome packet. And I noticed your garage door has been closed since 8 a.m. That's a red flag for the board." "I'm a consultant," Daniel replied evenly, leaning against the doorframe. "And I keep my garage closed to protect my tools and my privacy. It's a habit." "Well, habits change," Karen said, her tone sharpening. "Starting Monday, Rule 4.2 goes into effect. Transparency for safety. All garage doors must remain fully open from dawn until dusk. It discourages loitering and allows our enforcement team to ensure no illegal workshops or unsavory activities are taking place. It's for the good of the community." At the community meeting that Sunday, Daniel stood up. He was the only one who didn't look intimidated by Karen's gavel. "This rule is a security nightmare," he told the room. "An open garage is a grocery list for a burglar. You're showing them exactly what's worth stealing and how to enter the main house. Furthermore, a garage is part of the curtilage of a home, it's legally protected space. Forced exposure violates privacy and state privacy statutes." Karen didn't debate him. She didn't even look at him. She simply made a heavy black mark next to his name on her ledger. "Safety requires sacrifice, Mr. Reyes. Non-compliance will be treated as a confession of a security risk." The shadow in the garage. Over the next 2 weeks, Daniel was buried in suspicious activity and non-compliance notices. The fines were baseless, but they were persistent. Daniel ignored them, keeping his garage door firmly shut. However, his training kept him vigilant. He began noticing the signs of a professional probe. The latch on his side gate was disturbed, a small piece of clear tape he'd placed on the garage frame was broken. He knew a compliance check was coming. He just didn't expect it to be a felony. On a rainy Tuesday afternoon, Daniel sat in the darkness of his garage, perched on a stool behind a stack of storage bins. He was silent, a shadow among shadows. He heard the telltale scrape of a shim against the side door lock. Slowly, the door creaked open. A man stepped inside. He wore a black tactical vest with HOA enforcement slapped across the back in white letters. He carried a heavy-duty flashlight and a digital camera. He began snapping photos of Daniel's tool chests and the door leading into the kitchen, moving with an arrogance that suggested he felt untouchable. Daniel stood up. The movement was fluid and silent. "Step away from the door," he said, his voice a low, gravelly rasp. The intruder jumped, nearly dropping the camera. He reached for a can of mace on his belt.
"I'm authorized."
"Hoa inspecting."
"You're in violation of the Transparency Act. I have orders to document the interior of this non-compliant space." Daniel stepped into the sliver of light from the open door. He wasn't holding a camera, he was holding his service weapon, aimed with the steady, practiced hand of a man who had been in 3 shootouts. "You just committed a home invasion."
On the floor.
"Now. You can't do this." The man screamed, his bravado crumbling as he stared down the barrel. "Karen sent me. She approved garage inspections for residents who hide their property. I'm doing my job." "Karen doesn't have the power to suspend the Bill of Rights," Daniel said. He reached into his pocket and flipped open a leather wallet. The gold star of the county sheriff's office caught the dim light. "But I have the power to arrest you for first-degree burglary and criminal trespass." The collapse of the Regency. The scene outside Daniel's house 30 minutes later was a symphony of blue and red strobes. 2 patrol units and a supervisor's SUV blocked the street. Karen Whitlock came running down the sidewalk, her face a mask of faux concern that quickly melted into terror when she saw her enforcer in the back of a real cruiser.
Daniel.
This is a terrible misunderstanding, she cried, rushing toward him. Rick was just doing a spot check. We had reports of suspicious items in your garage. He's a community officer. Save it, Karen, Daniel said, his voice ringing out for the gathered neighbors to hear. I'm not Daniel the consultant today.
I'm Sheriff Reyes.
And your enforcer just gave a recorded confession to my deputies. He said you paid him $500 in cash to break in and find dirt on me because I challenged your authority. The investigation was a landslide. A search warrant of Karen's home office revealed a digital trail of tyranny. Investigators found emails to the board where she discussed targeting residents who questioned her. They found a spreadsheet labeled compliance targets, with detailed notes on which houses had the most valuable items visible from the street. Ironically, the very information she was allegedly trying to protect. The HOA enforcer, a man with a long history of petty theft and no security licensing, took a plea deal. He was sentenced to 4 years in state prison. He admitted that Karen had groomed him to be her muscle, promising him a permanent position once she cleared out the troublemakers. Karen Whitlock's fall was far more spectacular. She was charged with conspiracy to commit burglary, solicitation of a felony, and multiple civil rights violations. Because she had used her position of authority to facilitate the crimes and had endangered the safety of a peace officer, the judge showed no leniency. You turned a neighborhood association into a criminal enterprise, the judge noted at sentencing. You didn't want safety, you wanted a panopticon. Karen was sentenced to 16 years. She was led out of the courtroom in shackles, her authority reduced to a Department of Corrections jumpsuit.
The closed door.
Sterling Oaks returned to a state of genuine peace. The transparency rule was not just voided, it was scrubbed from the books with such fervor that the new board passed a Privacy First Amendment. The organized burglary ring Daniel had moved in to catch was eventually dismantled, ironically, because of the evidence found during the investigation into Karen. It turned out her enforcer had been selling information about open garages to the very burglars the neighborhood feared. Daniel Reyes still lives in the house at the end of the cul-de-sac. He still tinkers in his garage on Saturdays. But now, when he's finished, he hits the button and watches the heavy door roll down until it seals against the concrete. It isn't an act of secrecy. It's an act of ownership. He knows better than anyone that a badge represents the law, but a closed door represents the freedom that the law is meant to protect.